Well, it's happened yet again. Another Supreme Court justice has penned a brutal takedown of Ketanji Brown Jackson. First, it was conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and now even Sonia Sotomayor is calling Jackson out. Yes, you know things are bad for Jackson when even the most liberal justice on the Supreme Court is putting her in her place. So according to Blaze Media, even Sonia Sotomayor, bewildered by Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissenting opinion at the very bottom here, the Biden-nominated justice's colleagues apparently think she has a legal comprehension problem. Again, it's one thing if someone like Amy Coney Barrett writes that, but when the most liberal justice on the court is calling you out, we may have bigger issues than that. So this all began on February 11 when President Trump signed the following executive order, implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Workforce Optimization Initiative. The goal of this executive order, of course, was to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. And the argument that the administration was making was that since President Trump is the chief executive of the executive branch, he certainly should have a say in who is hired, who is fired in his administration and the executive branch as a whole. But they were very clear in this executive order. They mentioned the phrase applicable law 3 separate times. Section 3 mentions the phrase 2 times, and for good measure at the very bottom under general provisions, the administration clarified this order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. Now, the reason this is important is because Congress has passed multiple statutes, multiple laws that in some cases designate minimum staffing requirements. For example, the VA, the TSA, FEMA all have minimum staffing requirements that the executive branch is supposed to comply with, right? We have 3 co-equal branches of government. Congress passes the laws, executive enforces it. And so even though President Trump wants to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, he's going to do so while honoring the statutes that Congress has passed. Well, despite all of that, on May 22nd, a Clinton-appointed judge paused President Trump's effort to reduce the size of the federal government. Yes, you guessed it, he issued a nationwide injunction, and he basically put that on pause, and so this case went before the Supreme Court. Well, guess what? The Supreme Court ruled on this yesterday. According to Politico, Supreme Court greenlights Trump's order for mass firings across federal government. They reported that even though this wasn't an official vote, it appeared as if this was an 8-1 decision, and Fox News confirms this as well. You can see in the middle here an 8-1 order. Well, here is Ketanji Brown Jackson's dissent. Yes, if it was 8-1, Ketanji Brown Jackson was the lone dissenter, and this is what she had to say.
Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissenting, saying, for some reason, this court sees fit to step in now and release the president's wrecking ball at the outset of this litigation. In my view, this decision is not only truly unfortunate, but also hubristic and senseless. Lower court judges have their fingers on the pulse of what is happening on the ground and indisputably best positioned to determine the relevant facts. I see no basis to conclude that the district court erred, let alone clearly so, in finding that the president is attempting to fundamentally restructure the federal government, which, of course, the president has the authority to do as the top of the executive branch. Talk about hubristic.
I don't think he's trying to restructure the federal government. Sure, he's trying to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse, but it's not as if he's trying to minimize the power that either the judiciary or the legislative branches have. And so that's what Sonia Sotomayor pointed out. And again, Sonia Sotomayor is the most liberal justice on the Supreme Court. So things are bad for Jackson for this to be pointed out. Here's what Sotomayor wrote. I agree with Justice Jackson that the president cannot restructure federal agencies in a manner inconsistent with congressional mandates. Here, however, the relevant executive order directs agencies to plan reorganizations and reductions in force consistent with applicable law. Skipping ahead, the plans themselves are not before this court at this stage, and we thus have no occasion to consider whether they can and will be carried out consistent with the constraints of law. I join the court court stay because it leaves the district court free to consider those questions in the first instance. In other words, Sotomayor is basically schooling Jackson and saying, hey, you can't issue a ruling, you can't make a decision based on something that's not even before the high court. You have to stay on topic, stay within the lane. And that really hits at the heart of the discussion that's been happening at the judiciary, because there really are two types of judges. Number one, there are originalist judges who attempt to decipher the original meaning of the law. What did they intend when they wrote this? And we're going to issue our rulings, our decisions that way. And then number two, there are activist judges who want a predetermined outcome. They want to have their activism legislate from the bench, and they will twist and distort the law. They will thread the pretzeliest of needles to make their case. And it's very clear what side Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is on, and it's stunning to me that even Sotomayor called her out. Well, on Fox News, Jonathan Turley, an expert in all things legal, had an explanation and analysis of this.
Sotomayor noted in her concurrences that this order simply was having agencies plan for downsizing. And she said, well, we can hardly stop that. Well, yeah, Jackson believes you can. And this is part of a signature of what's becoming a type of judicial abandon that Jackson has towards the power of these courts. The court could not be more clear. This is another shot across the bow to lower courts that they've got to knock this off. They've got to stop with these injunctions. This is 6 months of delay. It could have been much longer. And the court is signaling, we're going to be on you very quickly if you continue to do these types of orders.
Now, Justice Jackson actually gave an interview with ABC News this past weekend, and it was overlooked, but there were a lot of stunning admissions in that piece. But before I show you that, I would like to acknowledge Tythos, thank you, Tim, KJ Burke, and Robert Stevens. Thank you so much, Robert. Very generous of you. As the members of today's Governor's Club, again, these are people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I really appreciate y'all, and I'm glad that you enjoy the videos. Well, she was asked about the state, she being Justice Jackson, was asked about the state of democracy, and this was a really interesting answer to me.
Last week, last week in a dissent, you wrote that you predict executive power will become completely uncontainable. Just today, a professor was quoted in the New York Times talking about you and said, Justice Jackson is trying to raise the alarm. Whether she is writing for the public or a future court, she is making a larger point about what she sees as not just the errors of the majority's position, but the dangers of it as well. Does the current state of American democracy concern you?
So I am actually heartened that people are focused on the court and the work that we're doing on the state of the government. Because again, as I mentioned, as a democracy, the people are supposed to be the rulers. The people are supposed to be leading in terms of the policies and the way in which our government operates. And so the more that people are engaged with our institutions, I think, the better. And so what I feel that I've been privileged to do is use the writings that I do, the work that I do, to explain my views about the way our government does and should work, the way the court does and should work. I think the nice part about being on the court is that you have the opportunity, whether you're in the majority or in the dissent, to express your opinions.
While some of that is true, she misses a lot of basic points here. Number one, we are not a democracy. We are a democratic republic. A big difference there. And if she can't even get that basic fact right, it makes you wonder, what else is she getting wrong? But yes, we do have three co-equal branches. Of course, Congress writes the laws, the executive enforces them, and then the judiciary is supposed to interpret the law whenever there are any issues arising. But the problem here, again, comes with these two types of judges, the originalist judges who truly truly interpret the law, and then the activist judges. And you can see her hinting towards it. I actually have a second clip where she really goes further, but these activist judges trying to legislate from the bench, and that's clearly what she wants there. When she's talking about her opinion and when she's talking about how the government should and can work, it's really clear that she wants to put her influence in beyond just interpreting the cases that are before her. Now, she starts talking about the implication of these cases, but judges shouldn't think about the implication. When you're talking about the law, you should be analyzing how is it written, how is it not, what does precedent say, and even if there are negative implications that we all can see, the reality is that Congress still exists, right? If Congress really wanted to take away a loophole, or if a law was being interpreted the wrong way, guess what? Congress can write and pass another one. They can clarify. And for whatever reason, Congress is just sitting on their hands and doing nothing. But here is what Jackson had to say about that.
In one dissent, you wrote, with let them eat cake obliviousness, today the majority pulls the ripcord and announces colorblindness for all. In a more recent dissent, you wrote, with deep disillusionment. And I'm not asking you about a particular case, but I am curious if you feel that some rulings pose an existential threat to the rule of law.
Well, I wrote that in one of my opinions, so I guess the answer is yes. I think that we have different kinds of cases that have different implications. And sometimes, the court will consider issues that actually relate to the lives of almost everyone in the country. Sometimes we have cases that are very narrow, that they really only affect a small number of people. And sometimes we have cases that have those kinds of implications. And, are there cases in which there are issues that have that kind of significance? Absolutely.
I hate to break it to you, Justice Jackson, but it is not your role to interpret and to try to guess what those implications are. It is your job to interpret the law and make sure it is followed by everyone involved. If there are implications that people don't like, or if people want clarity, that's what Congress is for. You said you want people involved and people are supposed to rule. Well, that's why we have representatives. We even have two types of representatives, congressmen and senators. Just saying. But as always, all of that is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So when it comes to DEI hires, the general consensus is that they're unqualified and people are just trying to meet a quota, right? And so my question here is, do you think that Justice Jackson is a true DEI hire and that she's incompetent, and any stupidity we get from her rulings or opinions or dissents is just because of that incompetence, because she's a DEI hire? Or do you think that she's actually part of the liberal intelligentsia? She's an activist judge who knows what she's doing, and she's trying to pervert and twist the law to get that activism over the finish line. Let me know your thoughts on that down below. If you haven't already, please be sure to leave me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button or to check out one of these videos.